Hi everyone! Today, we will be discussing about crop improvement by selective breeding. But first, what is selective breeding? Selective breeding involves selecting parents that have characteristics of interest in the hope that their offspring inherit those desirable characteristics. It aims to adapt an organism's characteristics in a way that is desirable to the humans that breed them. For example, if we breed tall parents together and exclude shorter parents, the offspring should inherit tall gene variants that make them tall. Some of the offspring may even be taller than both of their parents because they may inherit a combination of different tall gene variants from each parent, and together these make the offspring taller. With repeated selective breeding over multiple generations, this population will get taller and taller. Now let's go back to our original topic, crop improvement by selective breeding. To supply the food required to satisfy the increasing demands of an expanding world population, crops need to be constantly improved so they yield more. One major loss of yield is due to crop diseases. Toxins, also known as mycotoxins, produced as a result of some fungal diseases may be harmful to humans when they eat crop products. Although many of these diseases can be managed by pesticides, selectively breeding resistant varieties is a more ecologically sound and sustainable way of achieving control of disease. Here are the main stages in selective breeding. To decide which characteristics are desirable, to select the parents that show these characteristics, to choose the offspring that most clearly display these characteristics and use them to breed the next generation, and lastly, to repeat the process continuously. Now, let us consider some examples of how selective breeding is used to improve crops. Let us start with introduction of disease resistance to varieties of wheat by Amena.
Hi, my name is Amena, and I'm going to talk about the introduction of disease resistance to varieties of wheat. You may be wondering, what is wheat? Wheat, Triticum aestivum, is cultivated for the grain and used as a whole or ground. Main use is for flour and breadstuffs known by various names throughout the world. Now you have an idea about it, let's get back to my topic. Weeds are attacked by many fungi and other organisms. Diseases of wheat such as rust and mildews are a major factor in reducing crop yields. Take note that the more resistant a variety of wheat is, the greater the potential. Farmers have always selected those plants that were most productive and will have selected disease-resistant varieties along with the other favorable features. And so, scientists have deliberately crossed wheat plants known to be disease-resistant with others that were known to be high-yielding. Initially, they targeted resistance to particular diseases, but soon chance mutations led to the pathogen developing resistance to the disease, leaving the wheat vulnerable once again. Therefore, this led to selecting varieties of wheat with features that give more general resistance to most disease rather than just a specific one. Modern breeders now can scan the genome of wheat plants and detect regions that differ between disease-resistant ones and those are not resistant. They can then use gene markers to test new varieties of wheat for those genes that give disease resistance. This allows them to select plants more quickly than growing large numbers to maturity to see whether they have inherited the desired resistance.
So now, let's talk about disease resistance to varieties of rice. Breeding for disease resistance is a continuous challenge to rice breeders and pathologists. Hundreds of millions of people worldwide depend on rice as a staple food. A crop failure for any reason poses a real threat of starvation. Rice blast caused by a fungus causes lesions. So what is blast, by the way? Blast or rice blast is the most important disease of rice worldwide. Under favorable conditions, the disease can result in total crop failure. However, breeders found solutions for that matter. They screen and breed for resistance to blast, along with other desired traits that will suit various ecosystems. Selected plants showing resistance to blast are grown and first-generation seeds are increased to produce the second generation. Gene markers are also used to speed the selection process. A rice cultivar from Vietnam, which they called Tatip, has several genes that give resistance to blast. Another disease affecting Asian rice is bacterial blight disease. An African rice, Oryza glyberrima, is known for its resistance to blast and to bacterial blight disease. Crop improvement by carrying out interspecific process is another way of producing disease-resistant Asian rice. Here, varieties can be screened for the best resistance to disease and the ability to grow in a wide range of environments.
Hey, Jinan here, and I will be guiding you through the incorporation of mutant alleles for gibberellin synthesis. But before we begin, we must understand what gibberellin are. Gibberellin are plant hormones that regulate various developmental processes, including germination, dormancy, flower development, leaf and fruit senescence, and stem elongation. Due to these factors, it is desirable to produce varieties of cereals that do not produce the regular quantity of gibberellin. How do they do so? Well, since gibberellin synthesis involves a number of enzyme-controlled steps, a mutation in a gene called semi-dwarf allele produces a non-functioning oxidase enzyme that disrupts the synthesis pathway. This decreases the number of gibberellin in a plant. The low number of gibberellin prevents the breakdown of delaproteins, which inhibit plant growth. As a result, dwarf plants are produced. In terms of harvestation, dwarf varieties of cereals, which were developed in the 1960s, are quite beneficial. These dwarf varieties, such as rice and barley, produce higher yields for two main reasons. The first being that less of the products of photosynthesis are needed to grow tall, which causes more to go into the grain. Another reasoning is that the dwarf plants are less likely to be blown over or fall down. This makes it easier to collect more of the grain during harvesting. That's all for this topic. Now here to discuss the inbreeding and hybridization in maize is Hannah.
Now, let's talk about inbreeding and hybridization of maize.
But before we start, let us first define what is hybridization and inbreeding.
Hybridization involves the combination of genes of different varieties or species of an organism to produce a hybrid.
On the other hand, inbreeding involves the cross-fertilization of two closely related individuals displaying the desired characteristics. Now, let's start on its application on maize. Up to the beginning of the 20th century, maize was bred to produce greater yields. The yield from these inbred varieties gradually declined due to an increase in the frequency of harmful recessive alleles. Here is an example of a cross between maize that has smooth and starchy trait carried by homozygous dominant allele and maize that has wrinkled and sweet trait carried by the recessive allele. Both of the phenotypes of the origins are carried onto the offspring. This includes the bad trait carried by the harmful recessive allele, which caused a downfall on the yields of maize.
With this problem, the scientists made an action by selectively breeding organisms in order to obtain varieties that produce characteristics they find beneficial. This selective process includes selection for stem, roots, leaves, lateral buds, flower clusters, and etc. As for the case of maize, it was bred from a tall grass plant called teosinte. This produced a hybrid that increased yields, and since then, many hybrid varieties of maize have been developed. These produce the taller, more resistant, and higher yielding plants that are grown today. However, the disadvantage in the crosses between different strains produces varieties in individual plants, but farmers prefer similar and uniform plant crop to easily harvest and sell it.
To overcome this, companies now produce different strains of maize where each one is the result of a single cross. The farmer can then choose a strain knowing that all the seed purchased will produce F1 plants that have the same genotype. That's it for crop improvement by selective breeding. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe our channel for more videos.